Hello, everyone. I'm Mary Sitt, and this is Asian Viewpoints. We're now in our third year of the pandemic, and many employees are doing that quiet quitting where they just show up and do the bare minimum. Well, if you're the boss, you're not happy about this. You want a fully productive workforce. Our guest today is Jeff Ma, and he says there's a strategy for this. It's called love. That's right, love. Jeff Ma is a co-author of a book called Love as a Business Strategy. He's also the host of a podcast by the same name, and he's director of development at Software and Culture Plus. Jeff, thanks for being with us.
It's a pleasure to be here, Mary. How are you?
So what do you mean that love is the answer and love is the solution to a fully productive workforce?
Well, love is a very powerful word. It's used in so many different contexts, but when we say love is a business strategy, we're not talking about romantic love. We're not even talking about familial love, like, maybe many workplaces might say we need to be a family. It's actually much more simple than that. I think there's a love that we have for others, for humanity, really, that's built into us to care and have empathy for each other. And somewhere along the way that may have been lost in the workplace. I think a lot of us leave ourselves at the door when we enter a workspace. And when we say love as a business strategy, we're just trying to bring that humanity back into the workplace. It's about how we treat each other, and it's about how we see each other. Yeah.
It's not this kumbaya thing, we all hold hands and, we're a family. No, it's just being humane to each other. Is that right? And being kind to each other?
At the end of the day, yes. I think the other misconception about love is that it's just nice. I think a lot of people think that they have a loving workplace, that they're being loving, and really they're just only being nice. And I think a lot of us are very good at being nice at work. But if you think about the love in your life, it's not always just nice. It's hard. Sometimes it's tough, it's awkward, it's uncomfortable. Right. And it takes us to places that we may not even want to go. But
okay, so Jeff,
yes.
If you're going to do all that, and what you're saying sounds good on paper, or sounds good now, yeah, sure, okay. But in order to love, you have to trust that person, right?
Absolutely.
In a personal relationship, you don't fall in love unless you trust that person. So at work, how do you trust? How do you build that trust, that culture of trust? You can convey that sort of business type love.
Absolutely. And, it comes down to relationships, and it sounds simple, but in the workplace, we often neglect relationships. Our colleagues are just numbers on a paper or a deadline that needs to be met. And we forget that we are people at the end of the day. And, Andrew Stanton, the director of Finding Nemo, has a quote I love. He says, "There's no one you can't love once you know their story." And I think we don't care enough about the stories that make us who we are. And I'm generalizing, but a lot of times the work gets in the way. We don't have the time or the energy to go invest in each other. And you're absolutely right. Trust is a paramount piece of the equation. But in the book, we also talk about essentially 6 pillars that kind of make up a culture of love. And trust is one of those.
And what are the other 5 pillars?
So we also have inclusion, empathy, empowerment. I mentioned trust. There's vulnerability, and there's forgiveness. And because I'm on screen, I'm blanking on because I lost track of which ones I hit.
All the pillars are not being exhibited at Twitter right now, right? Don't do what that company's doing.
Sure, so, yes.
In the book, you talk about love means embracing the hard conversations. And there's a story of a woman named Maggie who goes up to her boss and says, after he cancels meeting after meeting after meeting with her, and she walks up and says, "Hey, I feel like you don't value my time." That's a hard conversation. I could never say that to a boss. And then of course the next day there's flowers on her desk from him, and it's not romantic at all. He's just saying, "Hey, you're right. I'm sorry. It's not going to happen again." Does that stuff really happen? I mean, was that just one isolated example, or can they get up the courage and the nerve to go into the boss's office and say those kind of things?
Yeah, I think it's possible. We practice it as much as possible. Are we perfect? No, we're human. But I think one of those things is that we try to encourage people to explore for themselves is think about all the things in your life. And if you just want to think about work, that's fine too. But basically think about all the engagements and encounters that you have that are awkward or don't sit right with you. How many meetings have you been in where it's clear to you and everyone that something was wrong, off, someone said something, and we all just smile, nod, and move on to the next agenda item? We call that harmony. We call that harmony, not in a good way. We always say we need honesty over harmony. And that's something that is trainable. That's something that's workable in ourselves and in our culture, where everyone has an understanding that the value of honesty is far greater than the harmony we might have in the moment by just smiling and getting along. Because inevitably what happens with that harmony is that those people leave that room, and then they still think about it. They still know it. It changes their perceptions. They don't get the clarity or the closure, and they go off and they gossip to somebody else, or it changes how
That's true.
Next time we engage, and it builds, honestly, that just builds toxic culture over time, right?
You have a chapter in the book called Behavior Eats Culture for Lunch. What do you mean by that?
So there's Andrew Drucker once has a well-known quote that culture eats strategy for breakfast, and we fully believe in that. And but we kind of bring it into our own space and say, well, if that's true, then behaviors eat culture for lunch. And what we mean by that is that just saying the word culture doesn't really paint the whole story. I think culture to many different people means many different things. Is it the ping pong table in your break room? Is it free coffee and free lunch? Those are perks. But culture at the end of the day is how each person in an organization treats each other. It's how we see each other and behave with each other. And
Jeff, can one person who believes in love as a business strategy actually make a difference?
Absolutely. And that's one of the, I guess, hardest things to get across to people. I think the corporate world has kind of beat us into this position where we think that we have to climb this ladder and this totem to make a difference, to have a voice. And while many environments may play that out to be true, we're seeing the world change, and we're seeing that people, more and more organizations and people at all levels are understanding the importance of a single voice and a minority, if you will. And not only that, your position, look at the world in which you mentioned quiet quitting. I mean, these are people who don't feel like they have that voice, not just unhappy with their pay, not just unhappy with a singular element of their work. They feel like they don't belong. They don't feel welcome. They don't feel a part of the solution. And love is truly the answer to that. And it can start anywhere. It doesn't have to be the CEO down. That definitely helps.
Right.
But I can feel that humanity coming from the person sitting next to me, my immediate boss, and even a subordinate. These are all people that can start that chain reaction.
Great. Well, Jeff, thank you so much for being with us. We'll be back next week with more from Jeff Ma. He will talk more about his personal story and how he spent 10 years in the gaming industry before he found his niche. If you like this video, please click the like buttons below and subscribe to this channel. I'll have a new video every Thursday. I'm Mary Sitt. Thanks for watching.